So, hello everybody, and welcome to Declutter Me, a podcast about organizing and decluttering your life with Shelina. Hello.
Hi, Chirag. How are you?
I'm good. We're kind of getting our video stuff sorted, I think,
Yeah.
once and for all, maybe.
Do I look glowy and bright?
Leave a note in the comments below if that's the case, and Shelina will respond to you.
I can't see myself. Right. Yes.
I'm sure that's really disappointing for you.
Yes.
So we're back after 2 weeks. We had to take an unfortunate break last week.
Yeah, I lost my voice last week, so I couldn't talk, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, for a podcaster, this is a pretty key element, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's
So,
right.
so that's what happened there. So today we're gonna talk about our follow up to the episode with Tilo,
Yes.
which obviously we want to discuss genders, men and women,
Men.
and that kind of thing.
Mostly,
Men
yes.
mostly. So let's talk about that. So you interviewed Tilo.
Yeah.
And why don't you just let's just summarize for the listeners what the episode was about. So
it was about men. I have dealt with men before. In an organising and decluttering point of view.
That's such a funny statement, right? Like I've dealt with men.
I've dealt with men before. Yeah. No, I mean from an organising and decluttering point of view, and working.
No, I'd hope in every point of view by now.
Yes. Yes. And working with them there's a different perspective. Working with them, there's a different way of working with them, a methodology, and the way their mind works from the moment they call me to the moment we work together. So I wanted to know more from a male point of view of why they think, why men behave like this, why they do what they do. So Tilo was great because he explained how they work and that they're more very systematic and very logical. They're not like, he gave broad sweeping generalizations, which we gave a disclaimer on because that was going to happen. But it was good to have that confirmed that yes, they are very systematic, they're very logical, there isn't an emotional attachment to a lot of things. It's more about how is it going to make it easier for them.
Yeah, so I think he was trying to, I think, just kind of give us a kind of an idea of like what the major differences are, because obviously there's a lot more nuance to that. I thought it was really interesting, right? So one of the things he said was men tend to want professional help in the decluttering space when they feel like they're going to have difficulty finding things.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas for women, it was more about the perception. So
Yeah.
I don't like the space around me, or someone who might be visiting me is not going to like how my space looks.
Yeah.
And so it has to do a little bit on that side. And for men, it's more like, I don't really care what someone thinks of what my space looks like, but when I have trouble finding something and I'm feeling, that's when I feel the hoarding.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting kind of contrast in terms of just, I guess, how the different brain spaces work anyway, right?
Yeah. And I mean, he used examples from grief. Like, so he deals with a lot of people who have lost their other half. So then they have to deal with things like household chores that they didn't have to deal with before. And that's a very common thing. And especially for the older generation, like we call them the grey pound at home. Like the grey pound is strong, like it's
the grey pound.
Yeah, so it's OAPs. There's a brown pound, the grey pound. They've got a huge, a lot of money. They've retired. They've got a good retirement package.
Oh, okay.
They have the good life. They have their wives there to do, and the husband and wives have been doing things, but they have set roles in their life. And then suddenly, if they lose their partner, they have to deal with the other half of things.
Right, so stuff that they don't tend to get used to, or have just not had any reason to deal with. Yeah.
And then, then they have to start dealing with it. And then it's trying to find the documents or find how to do things, like where things should be in the kitchen, where they should be in the pantry, which is what Tilo talked about, dealing with that kind of thing, like how much do they need of rice and, essential items that they didn't think they had to think about before. So he's had to deal with that. And that is actually, when he was talking about it, I was like, actually, there will be more and more of these kind of people out there in that situation as the older generations, one half passes away, the other one has to deal with it. And you see a lot in Europe because there is a bigger, older population, going on right now. You remember the Marigold Hotel? And Judi Dench had to deal with the internet.
Yeah.
Saying
there've been numerous, by the way. Like in pop culture, if you look at it, this is a very common thing, right? Like you lose a partner, and then let's not do John Wick right now, but like you lose a partner, and then suddenly you just discover that like you're trying to
Did you say John Wick?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, he didn't have to deal with the internet issues.
No, but he had to deal with a whole bunch of other things.
Yes.
Right? But the thing is, I mean, again, like it's this thing where like you're kind of now just taking over the whole picture.
Yeah.
And it's and oftentimes, of course, I mean, we've talked about it from a concept of Swedish debt cleaning, where we've said the people who are left behind, kind of dealing with stuff of the older generation, younger to older generation. But also sometimes when you're in that space, when you lose a partner, it can be a young situation too. It's also kind of like now, especially because those things are sudden, kind of how do I deal with all this stuff that already you're dealing with grief and you're dealing with other things. So the other thing I think that was interesting that he mentioned also was because he didn't relate it just to things, he also related it to people. And he was like, in a typical couple, again, it's a bit of a generalization, but the majority of cases, it's the women that are maintaining the relationships and even the friendships.
Yes.
Right, and so they are the ones kind of dealing with all the emotional weight of everything generally, while the men don't.
Yeah.
And so in situations where either the partner split up for a certain reason, or there is a death, or whatever be the reason why you find yourself single, you suddenly also find yourself without support systems.
Yes.
Because again, there's that kind of break in that you were not really maintaining those relationships, and suddenly now you can't suddenly reach out, or you can't suddenly. It's a bit of a complex situation.
Yeah, there is that, and again, that's a generational thing. I think it's, and I can see it with my father. My father worked for so many years, and commuted, so it doesn't have a friendship network where we live in Kent. He has a few people he knows from the mosque, but that's about it. So, there is that worry that if my mum was to pass away, then he would be alone in Kent. I'm here in Dubai, my brother's in London. So there is that. And then men find it more difficult then to deal with the things they have to deal with on a day-to-day life, but they find it very hard to reach out because they haven't needed the support network and they haven't had to rely on anyone because except for their other half. So to suddenly have to say, can you help, that is that can be a barrier as well. So I think it was great talking to Tilo because we got to talk about it's not just organising and decluttering. There were psychological things, that aspects of for men that just I didn't realise we would have to consider when working with them, when, helping them to organise. So yeah, that was fascinating to talk to him about that and to find that out.
And then there was one last thing but this is from your experience more than Tilo's, which I think is also an interesting one, where you run into this kind of gender issue, which is the indirect one.
Yes.
So you have the women that contact you sometimes, but then you have a very defensive partner step into that picture and be like, hey, I don't know why you're here. I don't know why you're doing this, or please don't touch my stuff. Right. Yes. So there's another, that's the other side of it. So I think what Tilo, and I think Tilo helped explain that typically this is the reason why the women tend to reach out to professionals more often, because they are worried about perception. They're worried about the feel. And so I think they start much earlier because the feel goes bad quickly, right? When something is disorganized. But for men, it's like, well, I don't care if it's disorganized, I'm going to find my things. So they don't care so much. And so it happens quicker. But then the male or the partner comes into the picture because now this new person has entered their space.
Yeah. And also it's a monetary thing as well. They're like, why are we wasting money on this when we can be spending money on...
Don't say sneakers, don't say sneakers, don't say sneakers.
Cars. Or holiday. I don't. Sneakers.
Holidays is fair though. Yeah. Cars, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Or just silly little gaming. They spend a lot of money on gaming. So, and it's whatever makes you happy. But with me and with the men in my clients' lives, when they see the after and see how things have changed for the better, then the light bulb goes on. And when they see the stickers and they see where everything is labelled, then they're like, this makes sense. Yeah. But they want to see the after. They don't want to know the during or the before. The before was fine. Yeah. They don't want to see the during. They want to see the after. So it's great if they're not there and come later and see it. So, yeah. But there are, it's a generalization. There are a few men. I dealt with a couple in Abu Dhabi last week, and he was the one who reached out to help his wife.
Of course.
And he was, very supportive, very kind. And while I was talking to her and helping her with her journey to declutter and to organize her stuff, he was listening in the lounge and, nodding and agreeing and coming in every so often to be supportive. And that was a brilliant session, and he was very good like that.
But that's your ideal, very, very ideal kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? So we've even talked about partners. We've even talked about sort of the like a couple and the dynamic that has an impact on how the decluttering process happens, and we've done that on previous episodes. So I think that's like it's a nice ideal situation where you can you have that kind of support. And we're not saying that those things don't exist, but I think what we're saying is, in general, this is the kind of behavioral pattern you see, and I think Tilo sees as well a lot. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. That's what we wanted to talk to you about this week. And so next week we're going to discuss a brand new TV show yet again. It's not Marie Kondo, but we're going to be talking about the home edit next week, and so we'll see you then.
All right. Bye.